Imagine a throne, not just empty, but waiting. Waiting for someone bold enough to claim what others fear. This throne is more than gold or power. It's the space where greatness is born. A young man stands before it, eyes fierce, heart unyielding. This throne is empty, but it's calling. What would it take for you to sit there? This young man was Alexander, not just a conqueror, but a force refusing limits. As a boy, he wasn't satisfied with the world handed to him. He saw walls where others saw open skies. At 12, he tamed a horse wild enough to break any rider, and he rode anyway. By 20, he commanded armies that shattered empires. But his hunger wasn't for land alone. It was a hunger to become more, to push beyond what others believed possible. Alexander lived for growth, for power, but above all, for transformation. He didn't just want to rule the world, he wanted to transcend the world he knew. Friedrich Nietzsche saw something deeper than survival or pleasure driving human life. He called it the will to power, the fundamental force pushing all beings not just to live, but to grow, to assert themselves, to become more. It's not about avoiding death or seeking comfort, as Freud suggested with his pleasure principle, nor is it merely the struggle to survive, like Darwin's natural selection. Instead, Nietzsche described life as an endless process of overcoming, a drive to expand, to conquer internal and external limits. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra and Beyond Good and Evil, he wrote that every living thing strives to impose its will, shape its environment, and transcend itself. This is the fire burning in the human spirit, the restless hunger that says, "I will not be what I was yesterday." It's an existential energy, raw, often uncomfortable, but necessary. And it's the lens through which we can truly understand figures like Alexander the Great. Alexander's life was a living example of Nietzsche's will to power in action. His conquests weren't simply about acquiring territory or wealth. They were about becoming. When he crossed the Hellespont into Asia, it wasn't just a military campaign. It was a declaration that he would surpass the limits of the world he was born into. At the Battle of Issus in 333 before the Common Era, facing a much larger Persian army, Alexander's tactical brilliance wasn't just a test of skill. It was a manifestation of his inner drive to dominate and transform his fate. He pressed forward into unknown lands, pushing armies and men beyond exhaustion, not because he sought comfort, but because he was compelled to expand himself. The emptiness of that golden throne was never about sitting idle. It was about filling that emptiness with power, a power that transcended mere conquest. What if the reason so many avoid such power isn't because it's unattainable, but because it demands something terrifying? What if the real fear isn't failure, but the overwhelming responsibility of becoming more than who you are? Alexander faced that fear and chose to sit anyway. And maybe, somewhere inside, so can you. That throne, the one Alexander claimed, is not just a symbol of power outside you. It's also a metaphor for the potential inside you that remains unclaimed. Why? Because of what psychologists call inherited limitation. Beliefs, fears, and patterns passed down through generations, embedded in your culture and family. These are the invisible barriers shaping what you think you can't do. Carl Jung called this your shadow, the hidden, rejected parts of yourself you refuse to face. The throne often hides inside that shadow, your unacknowledged strength, your unexplored desires, your fears of stepping into responsibility. And here's a harsh truth: most people avoid power because it demands freedom. And with freedom comes existential responsibility. Erich Fromm named this the fear of freedom, the anxiety we feel when we realize we alone are responsible for the choices that define us. So many thrones remain empty, not because power isn't there, but because we deny our own capacity to sit and rule our lives. What if the biggest obstacle isn't the outside world, but these inherited, unconscious limits? And what would it mean to claim that throne anyway? Today, many confuse power with position, fame, or image, what psychologists might call positional power. But Nietzsche described a different kind of power: authentic power, the deep internal force to shape yourself and your world. This power requires self-overcoming, a continual process of challenging your own limits and shadows. Jung warned that leaders who ignore their shadow risk becoming shallow or destructive because they deny essential parts of themselves. Simon Sinek's famous "Start with Why" captures the need for purpose, but without Nietzsche's will, this internal drive for growth, purpose can become empty or performative. True leadership isn't about looking powerful. It's about embracing the existential weight of power, the responsibility to grow, transform, and lead from within. Imagine leaders who don't just command others, but have mastered themselves first. What if your own power depends on this kind of deep, often difficult work? And what if the empty throne inside you is waiting for exactly that courage? Your throne isn't a distant palace or a golden seat waiting in some forgotten hall. Your throne is right here, in the parts of your life only you can build. It's in the choices you've avoided, the risks you fear, the growth you've postponed. Claiming your throne means stepping into your own power, embracing the inherited limitations and shadows as part of your journey, not obstacles. It means accepting the weight of freedom and responsibility, even when it's uncomfortable. Alexander didn't ask permission to conquer the world. Neither does your life need permission from anyone else to rise. The throne is empty, waiting, calling. Will you sit? Will you become more than who you were yesterday? The power is yours. The moment is now.